resource later. So that being said, I'm actually going to kind of rewind for a minute, go back to the beginning, and officially kick us off. So thank you everyone for joining for today's workshop. My name is Jennifer Shellham, and I just started at UTC in a new role as a commercialization counselor. And the idea behind that role is to provide an on-campus resource for UTC faculty and staff, researchers who are interested in IP commercialization. And I'll be working with the Office of Research and Sponsored Programs, the Center for Innovation and Entrepreneurship, and UTRF, all of who are on the phone today. So we're going to kick it off with just an overview of some of the UTC resources that you may be aware of already. And if you are, it'll be a good refresher. And if you're not, it will give you a good idea or some of the things that are on campus. And then I'll turn it over to Nir Chem from UTRF to talk about the intellectual property disclosure process, patents, all of that good stuff. So Angie, I'm going to turn it over to you.
Hi, I'm Angie Johnson. I'm the Assistant Director of the Office of Research and Sponsored Programs. I'm just going to give a brief overview of what we do and how we do it. You guys are some of our frequent flyers, so this will probably be a rehash of things you already know, but we'll go through it nonetheless. So here's our mission. We are the Office of Research and Sponsored Programs. We seek to promote scholarship, research, creative activities, and engagement by encouraging and providing comprehensive support to faculty and staff in the pursuit of sponsored programs. If we could move to the next slide, we'll delve into how we help in these things. So the first thing that we like to do is help you identify funding opportunities and linking you with the right funding agency and program. Some ways that we do this are through a pivot, which is a searchable database of funding opportunities, and we can work alongside of you to help create profiles and to generate information to help you find funding opportunities through the pivot database. In addition to that, we can conduct our own funding opportunity searches for you and help meet with you to develop a funding plan for a long-term plan of action to pursue your funding opportunities. The second item up there is supporting proposal and research development. So the nuts and bolts of the proposal, and how we like to help that is to provide you with resources before you even begin writing. We can help you find funded proposals from a program that you would like to pursue. We can help you review the application guidelines and come up with tip sheets, checklists, things of that nature to help keep you organized. We can support your participation in grant writing workshops, professional development opportunities, funding agency seminars. We like to arrange for experienced proposal writers or disciplinary experts to give you like a pre-review of your proposal before it's sent off to the funding agency. And we can help coordinate that process if it's something you're interested in. And then with enough lead time, we can help review your proposal narrative, offer editorial assistance and feedback, and definitely we can help review those budgets. We know that those are difficult, and it's often where we lean in the most. The third bullet there is coordinating submission and award services. So we like to go ahead and fill out all those agency forms with all those numbers and ID numbers and things that you don't really need to worry about, but we know by heart. So we go ahead and do that for you. Review and approve proposals before submission to make sure that we're following policy. We like to help you with those CAIUS entries to get those approvals before you submit. And then just review, negotiate, and process contracts and subcontracts related to anything that you may be working on. And then the last bullet is my favorite, and that's celebrating your research success. We like to help on the back end in taking those dollars and helping you get set up with your restricted accounts. Again, negotiating any needed contracts at that point, and then recognizing faculty achievement across campus. So that is in a nutshell what we do. Like I said earlier, I think most of you guys interact with us pretty regularly. So that's probably just a rehash of things you already know.
Thank you, Angie. And I think it's maybe obvious to point out, but a lot of invention disclosure originates with research. So that's why it's important. We will also be putting together some other workshops this semester that will leverage not only sponsored programs, but also the Center for Innovation and Entrepreneurship, which Libby Santon will talk about.
Oh, well, hey, everybody. It's great to see you. It's so nice to see anybody these days. So I'm glad you all are here. I am the director of the Center for Innovation and Entrepreneurship at UTC, and this center was established about 2 years ago. And for the most part, until about a week ago, it had been pretty much virtual. But now we have a 5,700 square foot space in the MAP building, and we're on the second floor. So for those of you that are familiar with the building, we're right next to PT and OT on the second floor. And it is a fantastic space that at some point in hopefully a not too distant future, we can really get to use and fully leverage. The way it's designed is there's a collaboration space, which we're calling the nest, like a mockingbird nest, that's in the center. And that's just open space for people to work on ideas, to collaborate with one another. It's filled with very flexible furniture and whiteboards and just a lot of moving things that can help you kind of show your creativity and work on ideas. There's also a classroom space that will be used for primarily entrepreneurship classes as we start out here in the fall. I know Tom Lyons, who's on the call with me, both of us are teaching face-to-face in there this fall, so that will be exciting. And it is fully outfitted with all the cameras and speakers so that we can use the Kaltura system to be able to interface with those students who aren't with us. And I should also say that about the nest space, because that can also be used for lectures, and when we have speakers, we can bring them in and use that space. There's also a lot of kind of semi-private meeting spaces, so small conference rooms that for right now can accommodate 2 people, but eventually 4. And then some mentoring space. So as we have people from the community come in or from other UT campuses or whatever, if they'd like to use that space to work with students or faculty or staff on ideas, they would have that space to be able to do that. The thing I'm probably most excited about is we'll have a maker space, which is kind of a maker space light in that it doesn't have all the woodworking equipment, but it has just about everything else. So if you need to prototype one of your ideas in physical form, this would be a great place to do that. We'll have a number of 3D printers, laser cutter, sewing machine, a vinyl printer, and a lot of hand tools and materials to be able to make things. So that's going to be coming online and should be fully set up by the end of September. And just to tell you a little bit more about the center, the other services that we offer, typically we have lunch and learns every semester, and there's usually 3 of them each semester in the fall and spring. And here we bring in entrepreneurs to talk about different subjects related to entrepreneurship. And those are always open to faculty and staff. So anytime you feel like you'd like to come to one of those, I hope you will. They probably will be mostly virtual. We're going to see what we can work out, but mostly virtual in the fall. So you can just dial into those. We're usually pretty involved with Startup Week, which will also be another virtual event. And Startup Week is a great resource for you guys to be aware of as entrepreneurs. There are literally hundreds of events that happen around our city during that week, including a couple we had on campus. And I know some of you participated in the Co-Starters cohort for researchers last fall, and you had your pitch during that week. And then we also have our, what is typically large entrepreneurship breakfast during that week. So that's something to keep on your calendar. It's either the 2nd or 3rd week in October this year. And then we also have pitch competitions, and we have one in the fall called Hatchet, like an egg hatching, not like a hatchet, and Fly in the spring. And Dr. Lyons and I are working to beef those up a little bit, especially the one in the spring, to really work on and be able to promote some of the ideas that are happening that have the ability to scale moving forward. So please stay tuned for more information on that. Personally, at the center, I've been involved with entrepreneurship mentoring for a long time. I'm a business owner myself, and have been through a lot of things that entrepreneurs face. And so I am happy to help any of you with things like the business model canvas, brainstorming, prototyping. My background has really been in marketing for my entire career, so really happy to talk to you about all of those things, and happy to schedule time to do that. And then also introduction to local and regional resources, and Jennifer can certainly help in this area as well, as she's been involved in a lot of this. But sometimes you may not be aware of some of the things that are located right here in our region, and we'd both be happy to help you make connections to those people or resources. And feel free to reach out to me if you have any other questions. I'm happy to help you.
Great, thank you, Libby. For those of you that are on the phone, we'll be sending out not only the slides, but also at the end, I've got everyone's contact information, and then we'll be emailing that to you as well. Obviously, you can look up the UTC resources online, but we'll provide that. And I'll talk about this at the end, but I will be spending some of my time at the MAP building as well. So if you're comfortable on campus, you can always schedule a meeting with me there, or we can do it via Zoom as well. All right, I'm going to turn it over to our next speaker, Nir Chiam, PhD from UTRF. He's he's a technology manager, but he's also a multi-campus resource. So UTC is his campus. I'm going to stop sharing. I know many of you know him, so he can go ahead and share his screen. During his presentation, if you have any questions, if you want to pop them in the chat and it makes sense to ask as he's going along, please do that. Otherwise, we'll have a Q&A at the end.
All right, thank you very much, Jennifer. Let me do the screen sharing here. Yeah. Okay. Get out the way. So, could everyone see my PowerPoint?
Yes.
Can you see my PowerPoint? Okay. All right. All right. I assume. Can you see my mouse? The cursor that I'm showing. Just want to make sure.
I don't see it.
Yes, Lord, we can.
Very good. All right, sounds good. That's great. And thank you very much, Jennifer, for the introductions and also the invitation for this presentation here today. I'm really glad to be here and talk to you about intellectual property and how University of Tennessee do technology transfer. Just sort of comment about Libby, talking about resources UTC. I was in an SBR phase 2, USDA SBR phase 2 review yesterday, and they, if any of you have gone through SBIR, that's phase 1. The phase 2 is bigger project where they have to have a technical aspect of the proposal and as well as the commercial aspect of the proposal. And on the commercial side, they also evaluate heavily on not only your proposal, but also the market as well, IP, and also the resource available to help with the startup. So it's very good to hear that we have more and more resource to help all of you. Just in case you're planning to have a startup, the resource is there to help you. And if you apply for the SBIR, is a strong component of the application. So make sure you mention that as well with your application. So with just sideline a little bit, I couldn't hesitate to mention about that. So for those who don't know me or I haven't seen me before, I apologize. Some of you may have seen my presentation before. So this is, like Angie mentioned, is hopefully it's a review for you. But those who don't know me, my name is Nia Ching. As Jennifer mentioned, I work for UT Research Foundation, which take care of intellectual property for the university. And so I'm going to talk a little bit about IP at the beginning, and then follow up with how do we, file invention disclosure, and how does technology transfer come about from UT to external collaborators. So let's talk about intellectual properties and so on. So what is intellectual property anyway? It's a creation of human mind or intellect, right? It's a type of intangible exclusive right that can be assigned or sold or leased. And a matter of fact, it is the basis for research commercialization. That's how we exist, UT Research Foundations, because there are a lot of inventions, a lot of research going on in university in overall, but in the past, prior to the 80s, right? There are a lot of all these inventions that got funded by federal government, but it didn't get anywhere in terms of commercialization. So in the mid 80s, there's one act called the Bayh-Dole Act, allowed the university to retain title for the IP, and that's give us the push for us to able to commercialize our own technologies to the world, put it into use. So with that said, as a matter of fact, the IP rights is granted by the US Constitution, which say like this, say like, to promote the progress of science and useful arts by securing for limited time to authors and inventors the exclusive right to their respective writing and discovery. So what it does is say is that, because you create something, either they're intangible, right? They're not like concrete you can touch, but it's intellectual, it's intangible, but it has certain value and it's going to be protected. So how do we protect it? There are four major forms of IP protection. The first one, as you all know, is patent, right? That's for mainly a new idea, creation, and inventions. And then the second form of protection is copyright, as you know, that, if you're a professor, you write a book, right? It's copyright protected against people who want to copy your books and so on. Trademark is used mainly for industry companies to protect their brand, like the Nike or Microsoft trademark. Another example close to home is a Power C, right? You see the campus Power C, that's a trademark for UT, Chattanooga campus. And then trade secret, one example here is Coca-Cola, right? The recipe for their syrup drinks, right? It's sweet and syrup. And I was told by someone to say at any moment in time, there probably only 2 or 3 people know about this trade secret, the recipe for the Coke, right? Because they don't want it to broadcast anyone. On the other hand, they don't want one person. What happened if one person, something happened to that person, they lose that trade secret, right? So it has been around. So these are 4 major kind of protection that used to protect IP. So let's look at it a little bit more in detail. For a patent, it's used to protect an innovation, and the term of this protection is 20 years to protect against any illegal make or use or sale of your invention, right? And then copyright is for the work of tangible media, like I mentioned, books, video, programs, computer program, and so on. And the life is a bit longer, the life of the author plus 70 years. And it's to protect against copy. Now, the last 2 is the trademark, like I mentioned, is for the company to protect their brand, like McDonald's or Nike and so on. And the term is forever, it's based on the use of that trademark. And it is to protect against any confusing similar mark. People see that you have a brand that's really popular, they want to come up with a very similar mark so that, can confuse the customers and so on. You can, if you think that infringing your trademark, you can sue them for that. And the trade secret or know-how is more like I say, trade secret, protection against any illegal disclosure, right? And the term is to protect anything. Let's say you're a company, right? You set up a company. You want to set up very robust trade secret protection When you're employing your employee coming in, you want to have them sign an NDA or something, not disclosing the public or disclosing your competitor in your technologies or trade secret. And this lasts forever as long as the secret is kept, right? The moment you release the public, it's no longer a trade secret. So those are two form IP protection. Let me focus on, spend a little more time on the copyright here. We do some copyright, but not a lot. So copyright, is, like I mentioned, is used for any creative work, like computer programs, song, music, video, and so on. Books, it's not on here, but books also, you write a book. You just, when you publish or put out, you read the first page, it say copyright and the year and by who and so on. And then it's for an expression, the protection and expression of an idea. And like I mentioned, the protection life is long, 70 years plus, right? So for example, it is cheap. Like Michael Jackson, he just passed away recently, right? All his song or creation, you know, from that day he passed away, that's extend to another 70 years. So all his estate can, you know, can receive that, you know, if anyone will come back from selling his song or licensing his song or you know, so they can get the money. So why do I say it's cheap? Copyright is by, you know, by itself under the present Copyright Act. The copyright protection begins automatically upon the creation of the work. So when you created, you publish a book, it's protected by copyright law, right? So there's no restrictions required for copyright to exist. You just publish and label it. However, if you want to sue somebody, right? You know somebody is copying your work, you need a registration as a requirement before you can pursue legal action for any copyright infringement. And it is enforceable worldwide, copyright, because the US has some treaty and agreement with other countries, so it's fairly broad. Copyright is copied, you know, worldwide. And then if any of you interested in more of this copyright material here, I would suggest you to go to a reference we call Circular 38A that you can describe more about copyright protection. Now, let's go to focus on patent. That's what we mainly do. Patent is another form of protection for invention on. So think about patent is a form of protection to protect the know-how, right? Think of how things work. Like if you have a recipe for cake, a really good cake, the recipe behind how you make the good cake is an idea that is potentially patentable by, you know, as your creation or idea. Now, if the patent is a form of protections to provide your legal right to the patent owner to exclude order from making, using, selling, or for sale or importing the claimed invention. The last part here, what does it mean is that let's say there is a patent protection in the US, but per se, you're not really making it, you're just interested in selling it, but there's not a, you know, other people, like say importing something else made in China or something, you really want to import it in for sale here. Now, if there's a patent in the US, it can block you from selling that product in the US. Does that make sense? And the last point here, it is a document that provides a limited monopoly for 20 years, but not the right to practice to the invention. I'm going to come back to this point here in a moment with an example to illustrate what does it mean by, you know, what do you mean by I have a patent but not the right to practice, right? I'm going to come back to this with an example. And a patent, as you know, is expensive, right? And it could take long, it could take 3 to 5 years to obtain, as compared to like copyright is almost like when you publish, the moment you publish is copyright protected. The lifetime is also short, 20 years, right? And it's expensive. So with all that said, you would say, well, why would you go for patent, not copyright? Well, patent is a lot stronger protect, right? A lot of people use, you heard about patent protection and lawsuit between one company, let's say Apple versus Samsung the other day, on their cell phone and so on, that worth like $billions of dollars lawsuit, right? Because it's a form of very strong protection, it's even stronger than the copyright and so on. So let's talk about a little bit more detail about the patent. So what is considered as patentable as a subject matter? The patent is allowed for any new process or machine or manufacturing method or composition matter. For example, a drug formula, a molecule for a drug for treatment of, let's say, asthma or Alzheimer's disease and so on. Or any improvement of any above items that I just mentioned, right? So those are the subject that can be patentable, and so in essence, it's anything under the sun made by man. Okay, excuse me. Hey, mommy, would you quiet? No, I'm giving a presentation. Sorry, and then. And things that what's not patentable here? Well, one of those things is law of nature, right? You cannot just patent gravity, right? Or force you to, Fe to Ma, force you to mass time acceleration. Physical phenomena like gravity and so on is not patentable. Any plant or animal found in the wild, so naturally existing, right? I must emphasize here is naturally existing plant or animal. Because we have now technologies to create in the lab, genetically modified plants and so on, and animals, breeding and so on. Those are fully man-made that can be patented. Naturally occurring compositions like, you go into Smoky Mountain, you collect some kind of species or some collection of fungus and so on, right? They by themselves are not patentable, but the use for these compositions can be patentable. You can, let's say you find a fungus that can treat, let's say, cure cancer. You can patent for the use of those composition or material. Another thing that is not patentable is just a mere idea only. Let's say, for example, you wake up in the morning, you have an idea. Let's say, you can create like, Dr. McFly, right? Back to the Future, you invent a time machine. But before you can make a flying machine and make sure that you think the idea works, just an idea to, of the generating a time machine alone without any supporting evidence is not patentable. Any abstract idea, like I mentioned, or some algorithms, business method, there was and the last 2 years, there was a legal case just a couple of years ago that went on all the way to the Supreme Court. And the case mainly, just briefly, is for a patent on algorithm for trading stocks and so on. And as it was determined, there's back and forth, there's some appeal, and then it went all the way to the Supreme Court. And the Supreme Court decision was that if a method that can be derived from a computer, but human can be making it, right? People can do it. It's just slow, and computer just matter of simply make it faster. Then therefore it's not a new invention. It's just make it faster. Therefore now, patent on software is really tricky to obtain, right? It's very difficult to obtain a patent on a software and so on. So just keep that in mind for those people working in the field here. Patenting of software is getting more and more tricky. I'm not saying that it's not possible, but it's a little bit harder now to obtain patent because of recent Supreme Court decision. Now, what are the requirements to obtain a patent? So in this case, for utility patent, you want to require items for requirement for patenting is the use, right? The idea has to be useful for some specific purpose, right? So that's easy to do because usually by the time you get to your research, and by the time most people find invention disclosure to us, they already have an idea of what it's potentially used for. The second criteria and the third criteria are a little bit more tricky, and I want to bring it out here. The second criteria is novelty. Novelty means new, but has not been published. So let's say you come up with your research and come up with a view for your invention that is you think is new and so on. And you're eager to go out there and publish or talk to somebody else at a conference. But this second criteria is not being met, right? It's no longer novel the moment you go out there and talk to people. Now there's in the US, so that case here, you don't meet it. So you lose the right for that patenting. In the US, there's a little bit of flexibility. They allow you to, the inventor to have 1 year's grace period after disclosing to the public to file an invention. But with that say, your patent is already, your patent string is already reduced because you already disclosed to the public. There may be other people start to work on it. So it's a little bit tricky the moment you publish your work. So just something to keep in mind when you're working on something you think there's a potential for an invention there. Non-obvious criteria is that, let's say you have an invention as, C, right, is a combination. Let's say another invention has A, another invention has B, and your invention is merely a combination of A and B together. And the people, criteria, people with this skill, are people, your competitors, your people who work in the same area as you are, they look at that and like, it's nice invention, but it's just like, it's a combination of A and B. Therefore, I think it's so easy. It's just naturally derived from these two inventions. So therefore, the examiner will say, no, it's obvious, therefore you're not allowed to have a patent. So those are the criteria that is specified by the patent law. And for majority, it's almost all the any country in the world, right? So what are the type of patent? The one I mentioned earlier, the requirement with the utility is specifically for utilities and for protection of new product and processes, and for a period of 20 years. Now, there are the two type of patent. The second one is the design patent. That is for many novel ornament design. For example, you come up with some kind of structures or art that has very specific design, or any medical device that is very specific design. You can file both the design patent as well as utility patent, right? To protect your product and inventions. The third one is the plant patent. Like I mentioned earlier, natural plant, you can file patent, but man-made plant, or through genetic engineering or whatever method, cross different genes and so on. Those are patentable and also has a timeline, time protection of 20 years. Oh, I forgot to mention the design patent has a little bit shorter time protection, only 14 years. So those are the type of patent that you can obtain. So let's talk about the process, right? So you think there's an invention going on, what do we do? So we do is we check for patentability requirement, like I mentioned earlier, those three criteria, specific use, novelty, is it novel, is it non-obvious? And if they're okay, you think it's okay, you think there's a chance here, we file a patent by, and then you have to determine the type of patent application, whether utility, plan, or combination of the two, or a design and plan. And then you either you draft it yourself, or most of the time we hire a patent lawyer because they know the legal process and know how to draft a broad plan and so on. To draft an application with the required parts. It's like, for example, if you are a professor, you want a publication paper, you send a publication to editors, right? Their required part, you need to write an introduction part, you need to write, a method part, and then summary data and so on. Same thing for patent. There's certain required part that need to draft up to according to the patent law requirement. And then pay the appropriate fee and submit to the patent office. Now, if all go well, then the patent is issued. But wait, I would say it doesn't mean that you can practice invention, right? So think for a moment. So let me go back to my earlier slide I mentioned about the patent is a document that provides a limited monopoly, not the right to practice the invention. So what do I mean by that? Let me give you an example. Let's say, let's say we go back to the Stone Age, right? There's caveman A, he come up with an idea of a bucket to transport water and so on. And it's a new invention because nobody has invented that before. And he submitted and he got a patent for his bucket. Now, let's come along, a caveman B use the bucket and say, it would be nice. It's nice, but it would be nicer if I have something to carry to help with the carrying the bucket, right? So he invented the handle. So he, sorry. So he created a handle. So he filed a patent for the handle and the bucket with the handle. And so because it's an improvement of the earlier version and it's novel, therefore a patent is also issued to him. So what happened to Kevin B patent? Doesn't mean he can use his patent. Well, Caveman B cannot use his own invention because it will infringe on Caveman A's patent, right? The bucket with the handle, but it's still a bucket, right? And it's covered under Caveman A patent, which is a bucket. But, so Caveman A cannot use his patent because Caveman A patent is blocking him. But Caveman B can also stop or blocking Caveman A from using his invention of a bucket with a handle. So usually in modern time here, based on my time experience here, is at the end of the day, because these blocking patents, at the end of the day, in order for the product to be put in use in the market, because people would buy a bucket with a handle, both parties have come with some kind of agreement, either cross licensing or licensing has to obtain both patents before they can practice, to sell the product. So that's what it means by you have a patent. Doesn't mean that it gives you the right to practice your invention. There could be blocking patents that blocking you from practicing your creation there. So why patent? As some of you are interested in startup or funding later on for or launching product, patent is, like I mentioned earlier, is a very strong way to protect your invention, your product, right? It gives you a competitive edge, especially if you are a startup. You have a lot of will, but you don't have a lot of cash. You don't have a lot of, like a big competitor come in and look at your product, and you always spend a lot of money and develop your first product. And they look at that, they can reverse engineer and can put you out business. Patent is the method for you to block them from copying your product. And that gives you an exclusive right to market your product with that invention. So it helps you to maintain your competitive edge. The second important thing is to obtain funding. Right? Either funding for as a researcher, when you reach out to potential companies for funding also, when you have a patent, it's a strong support for argument for supporting your funding as well, especially for startup. You need to raise money and so on. It is a type of asset, right? Like I mentioned. On 3 here is a type of asset called intangible asset. And if you do a balance sheet, is go into that balance sheet as a form intangible asset. That is valuable. You can use it for also sub-licensing or licensing to other people to create cash to run your business. So those are a few examples of the value of patent. Like I mentioned earlier, right? Patent itself can have a big deal. What Apple and Samsung sue each other for billions of dollars based on patent protection. So here in this slide here, I just want to give you a few examples of useful and profitable invention has been created in the past. By all means, these are not created by university only. For example, an MRI machine for helping with diagnosis of cancer. Gatorade, at one point, it was a patented product. but now it's expired. Now, the University of Florida still managed to get a lot of money from their trademark. So this product has been protected by both patent and trademark. Now the patent expired, but the trademark they still can maintain and receive a lot of royalty from it. Insulin is another one that was, synthetic insulin was really useful for treatment of diabetes people, for diabetes people. Seat belt, for example, the one that we use day in, day out for protection of people in a car, right? At one point was patented. Google here is meant to be more of a trademark name. Google's name is, it's a very popular name, and you can see that it has a TM right next to it, another form of patent. The last item I draw on the right here is a drug for treatment of asthma, single layer from Merck. And I'm not sure any of you have used that before, but I use this as an example from my personal experience. I was personally involved in this project about slightly more than 20 years ago at a Merck Facility Research Center up in Montreal to help with develop this product. And I was there as an intern and time passed and the product has been expired, patent has been expired. But the other day when I went to bring my boy, he was about 3 or 4 years old at the time, he had some trouble breathing. And I went to the doctor's office and he's prescribed Singulair. I said, oh my God, this is something I helped 20 years ago and now it come back and help me. So you never know, working on patent or technology that can help you sometime, in another way that you don't never know. So Singulair was one of the blockbuster drugs for Merck at one point before, the year before it went expired. The annual sale for this single product was about around $6 billion. So it was on a big blockbuster drug that, the patent itself is very valuable, right? And I also want to briefly mention about, if you haven't heard about the term patent cliff, the moment this drug here went off patent, right? Within 4 weeks, their revenue dropped 95%, okay? The reason being is all the generic market, the generic producers, all the line up, and the FDA not only allowed, the moment the patent expired, the next month or next quarter, they allowed 10 generic competitors to come out on the market and compete with this product. That's why sales of Merck for this particular product plunged 95% in a single quarter. So to indicate the value of patent, especially these blockbusters. Now I'm going to talk about invention disclosure and technology transfer at this point here, but before I'm doing so, is there anyone who has any question about patent or IP that I should?
I have a question about Google. Like Google, what is patentable in Google versus, because I saw trademark for them. Right.
So Google, I think it was their algorithm. I think at one point was patented. Now I'm not sure that patent is still there. Google came out from Stanford, was a couple of graduate students from Stanford. And they send these invention disclosures to Stanford, and this is a story I heard, okay, by all means, I didn't work at Stanford. And they look at the time, they look at their search algorithm, and at the time, I believe Yahoo already had some kind of similar technology search, and they return inventions back to the inventor. But the inventor was keen, and they know there's a difference between them, and they developed their own for the search engine as we know these days, right? And so now the success, you all know about Google, how big the company is. But that slide here just want to mention a couple of examples about either patented or copyright, IP related technologies been out there to help people. This makes sense. So for sure, the name is trademark. I'm not sure exactly whether they still have a patent or if it's the algorithm or they keep it as a trade secret, because I'm not a software. Maybe you're in that space, you can help me more understand whether it's their code has been released. I don't believe it has been released, but
so Google Alphabet, I think they filed over 17. Maybe it's 1,300 patents. So definitely filing a lot.
But yeah, but they have business more than just search though. They have like self-driving car. They have,
Absolutely.
so many different products. All these smartphone gadget and so on. So it is a very diversified company now. But at the beginning, they're very specific for their search engine, right? So that is. Have I answered your question, Hem? That sounds good. So any other questions? If not, I'm going to move to the technology transfer. How are we doing for time, Jennifer? I don't want to.
I'd say about 10 more minutes. I think
10 more minutes. Okay, sounds good. I will get through this. So let's talk about technology transfer, all right? So let me talk to you, if you don't know about UTRF, a little bit about UTRF. It's UT Research Foundations, and our mission is to help the community to encourage innovation, enhance research, facilitate economic development by commercializing intellectual properties created within the university system. So these are the 4-pronged missions for the University of Tennessee Research Foundations. We have 2 offices, one in Knoxville and the other one in Memphis. The one in Knoxville here help UTK, Institute of Ag, which is a combination now, the Public Service Institute, UTC, you guys, and the Space Institute down Oklahoma. Our sister office in Memphis helping UT Martin campus as well as the Health Science Center campus. So overall, we help the whole system for any IP need. And part of the IP is UT has an IP policy regarding intellectual property and also a revenue sharing policy, and I want to share with you here. On the IP policy, it states that any invention made by UT employee, faculty member, staff, graduate student in the course of their duty or using their UT resource and facility are owned by UT and therefore can assign to UTRF, right? So that's the policy, UT IP policy. Now, because you're filing invention disclosure and this is your baby, you work with us and hopefully we launch the market and hopefully we'll generate some revenue. If there's any revenue coming back to us, we have to share with you, right? And this is just an illustration of that. The first 5,000 go 100% to the inventor, right? And then after that, whatever above that, we take out the expense like patent expense and so on. And the net, 40% of that net go to the inventors. I mentioned inventor because there could be sometimes more than just one inventor. 30% goes back to UTF and the remaining 30% split evenly between the department and campus. So some money goes back to the campus for R&D and so on. Now above that amount, if you see more than that, that's a nice thing to have, and the numbers change slightly differently like I showed in here. So, when you do work on the research as a faculty members and you think there's a potential, invention or idea and applications for your research, we ask you to go ahead and file an invention disclosure to us. We now have a web portal called IDEA, which stands for Invention Disclosure Enterprise Application, that you can share your ID with UT and UTRF. And it's different than what we had a few years back, which is a paper. This is all online and it's a fast and a secure way for you to file invention disclosure. And we have this for quite a few years now and everyone's kind of happy about it. So I'm really glad that we moved to this online system with this IDEA portal because it makes life a lot easier for us, especially the faculty members can track the progress of their invention disclosure. Now, so let's now go back to a little bit detail here, right? If you have an idea, like I say, we ask you to go to the web portal. So just, type in, go to UTRF webpage, which is, and then click onto the IDEA web portal, idea.tennessee.edu. You will land on this page, right? And then we ask you to enter your credentials to log into the system, which you will arrive to this page where we ask you to start an invention disclosure. The moment you click on, now if you are not sure, you can follow, the instruction here, but the moment you click on this, start an invention disclosure, you will land on this page. And the point of this page here, I want to tell you is what do we need in the invention disclosure, right? In there on the general tab, you click on it, it will ask you for a description of the invention. That's where we ask you, to give us a general description of invention disclosure. What is it about? Is it about Type G? Is it about a software and so on? A little bit more detail so we understand what it is. And then we also ask you for who are the inventor or potential contributors to the invention. It's important because if we go out there and file a patent, we need to know who are the inventors and possible inventors. It's also very important. And it's external funding source and sponsor, especially federal funding. We have certain reporting requirement. Private sponsor who sponsor our project, they do have contract with us. There's certain IP requirement that we need to we apply to follow if there's an invention. And then public disclosure, this is very important, right? If you disclose that in a conference or something, you better know as well, because that also, second criteria I mentioned earlier, requirement for a patent allowance is novelty. Does not affect novelty. And then attachment, any manuscript, anything that you need you already have, or PowerPoint presentation, or poster or something, please attach it so we have an idea what it is about. And then allocation of right of inventions. If there's more than one inventor, you need to specify how many percent each inventor has the right to share on that one here. And sometimes if there is an invention that you work on, but it's not really related to UT work, right? You work in your garage on the weekend, nothing has to do with, far away the field research that you're doing, right? Let's say you work on a computer or doing plan, but let's say you have an invention about a new truck or something that you have nothing to do with your work. Then we ask you to file invention as well, let them know, and then let the department head know, and so on. So potential conflict of interest, we better know ahead of time. And then that invention disclosure will be routed for approval. The department head, your dean of your area will also need to approve this invention before it arrives to us, right? So after defining the invention disclosure, it will go through there and get to us. You submit it and it get to us. And what we do is we're going to evaluate the technologies. We ask two main questions. The first question, is it protectable? Is it patentable or copyrightable, right? And if so, is there a market need for that, right? Sometimes you have a new novel invention, but it's only a few people, right, to use it. So the next question, is it big enough as a market? Because we're not just filing patent for it to let it sit on the shelf. We want to have a partner to develop this. We need a commercial entity, a for-profit entity to develop this further. It means that's going to spend the money to develop this in the product and services. And if there's only just a few people or market too small, that the likelihood of licensing these technologies to those companies is very slim, right? So now, after evaluation, if we think the answer is yes to all these questions, then we proceed to file protection, patent, or copyright if we need to, and then go out there and market the technologies to either established company, big firm, or startup company. We encourage, remember our missions, we encourage startup, right? So some of you interested in startup, let us know as well, or let Jennifer, we all work together to help you to be successful as a startup company. And I'd love to see some of you start up a company and become a Google or mega $billion company. That would be a success for us. That I'd love to see. However, after evaluation at any point in time and during this process, and we don't see any, there's no, the answers on this question is no, then we probably will return the invention or the right back to you as the inventors. All right. Here are a couple of examples of product has been launched in the market based on our UT technology. The first one here, I licensed this technology. It's called Seed Squirter that has been marketed by a company called Capstan. This is the invention based out of UTRE, Dr. John Wilkinson at the Biosystem Engineering. And the way this works, the novelties here is, for corn grower or seeds, people grow corn and so on, or other similar related company that play at using seed. The way they work in the past is they put the seed down, but they need to protect the seed with some kind of chemicals, right? So they spray chemical. After they put the seed down, they spray chemical all along the row of the seed they spray. Guess what? The one right in the middle between the seed, there's no use for it. It's a waste, right? So this inventor come up with a new invention disclosure to figure out directly when and where the seed was placed, and that's just do a squirt of chemical, therefore it's called seed squirting, of chemical solution to protect the seed, right? And therefore save a lot of, money on fertilizer or chemical to protect the plant. So that was his, I think it was really good idea. Pond is a game to help teaching nursing students through live scenario that was launched by Life Care Sim. The simulated electronic fetal monitoring is an app to help with to nursing students to learn the way, electronic fetal monitoring in a fun, intuitive way. And the right-hand side example here was launched by Rescue Critter with our license. It's a canine endoscopic mannequin to help nursing students to learn how to probe the digestive system without using an animal. So therefore we save a lot of dog's life. So those couple of examples of product on the market from us that we have passed in the past. And another form of IP I also want to mention about here is some of you may work with is, let's say you work on material or cell line, or we call research tool, right? That is not patentable, but they are material. They're useful, like seeds and so on. They're useful for other researchers, where we call research tool or software that are also IP, but they're material IP that we can license our people. But because they are not patentable or they're not copyright, we can license them out as well. And we have designed a web page on our web page specifically for these, right? Including software and so on. We call it UTRF Express licensing. So the model is like the people who need the material can go to here, like Amazon, you go there to click on to decide, what material you want, or which patent, or which copyrighted or software you want to download. And then the issue fee or the payment they make is considered as the license issue fee. And in here, this model is we already have the predetermined terms, so we don't have to go through a negotiation of the license whatsoever. So there's an economy of scale here. It's very easy to do a license this way, right? So keep in mind for those folks who have, research tool or software they're going to license, this is another route that we can license now. And
so
finally,
here, just to clarify on this one, a faculty member or researcher would still go through the invention disclosure process.
That's
and
correct.
At that time, you might decide that it's not patentable, but it's a good candidate for licensing.
That's exactly right. Thanks, Jennifer, for clarifying that one. Yeah. So we also ask you to file invention disclosure, and this webpage managed by us, but you'll be aware of, and the material, let's say, for example, the first one I'm teaching at is a material, I guess it's a antigen system, antibody system, where if there's a purchaser or licensees who want the material, they order through our webpage and they go directly to inventors for the quantity of what material they need. And the researcher will just prepare that material and ship out to them. And when the money coming in, we distribute to the inventor according to our IP policy. Have I answered your questions? That's good?
Yes.
All right, sounds good. So, just to wrap up my talk here, I just want to share with you, my colleagues, the licensing folks. Mohar Krishnamurti is our VP of licensing here in our office. And then Adriana Scofield took care of the engineering portfolio. I myself took care of the portfolio for UCC, most of the Institute of Ag, except plant biotech. In chemistry, chemical engineering, Kusumbator, she takes care of portfolio for medical stuff, biology stuff, because she has background in biologies and medical. And then Robin Wright Guerin is, she just recently promoted. She was a patent coordinator, but she's now an assistant commercialization manager, taking care of a different variety of different invention disclosure. And with that saying, I'd like to thank you very much for your attentions, and my contact is here. Feel free to reach out to me either by email or by phone. I'm still working from home, but you just should, leave a voicemail and you go directly to my mail, so I will be able to answer to you. With that said, thank you very much for your attention.
Thank you for that explanation and presentation. So we've got time for questions. If anyone has any questions, Rainier, related to what you're thinking about. I will say one of the goals that I have committed to is increasing the number of invention disclosures coming from UTC. The more invention disclosures, the more likelihood that there'll be patents and commercialization activity. So I do want to encourage those of you that are on this call that either have research that perhaps has produced something worthy of a patent disclosure to go ahead and do that process. And then I'm also a resource. Like I said, I'll be working with NEAR once to talk about a disclosure if you're thinking about it before you've actually done the work. Libby Santon mentioned some of the opportunities for help that you can receive from CIE, specifically around customer discovery and marketing, and that pipeline that was presented, kind of where they evaluated at UTRF. Having some information, some background can help them better understand your invention as well. Is this something that there is a market for? Obviously, they've got the resources to do their own investigation, but if you've done the work ahead of time, you've done some customer discovery, you've thought about where this might apply or what industries, that can make the process a little bit more easier for them as well. So that's a resource that's available through CIE, either directly with Libby or through me. And I'm here to help answer those questions and navigate that process. That being said, does anyone have any questions they wanted to ask?
I have a question about a patentable idea. Ariel Nagy mentioned that if let's say we are talking about a new material, a composition, a recipe. So we see in publications a lot of recipes, a lot of composition, people try different things, and this is could be like a known science for many people, but specifying that and getting to a specific composition. I tried several and I came up with this particular composition, resulted in these best properties for that application. Would that be patentable, or does it have to be a completely new composition, for example, if we are talking about materials or recipe?
So I assume that I can answer that question, that one. So that is something that keep in mind that when we file patent applications, it would be reviewed by a patent examiner. And what does the examiner look at are those great criteria, right? Utility, novelty, and non-obviousness. So your question is probably more fall on the question is non-obvious. Is it obvious? Because there are other things out there that's similar, but it's not identical, right? So I've run through this all the time when I have patent proposition with the help of the patent lawyer. The office actually be rejected because obvious based on this prior art. So though they will examine very specific, point out why is yours not, he or she believe that yours is not patentable because it's obvious, right? And it's up to us to defend. It's like a physicist, defend, right? Defend is up, hey, why it has to be up to us to point out the difference. Why it's not obvious. Sometimes it's a surprise. I do this, you do this, but you never get that. So some kind of supporting document or your experience or some indication from other researchers that if you do this, it wouldn't happen this way. It's some kind of surprising result. So it's one way to overcome this kind of rejection. But it is different from case to case. It's also different from examiner to examiner. I have encountered one examiner so tough that, I mean, we've been back and forth probably like 5-6 times before we end up with convincing him that, hey, we have something here. But you know, that's why it takes time to get a patent, especially if you have something that closely related. Then we keep coming back and read it. And these people, these examiners, sometimes they do have the expertise. I think the requirement is a minimum is a bachelor, but it's our role to teach him or train him, right? Understand the difference because they're not expert, but they do have a huge database to find out any related material. They use that against you, right? It's up for us to defend our case. And so that's why lawyers get a lot of money because they're good at defending our case. I hope I answered your question, Andy.
Yeah, yes, you did. Yeah, that made it clear.
So anyone else have a question? If not, I have a question for you. So especially for those faculty members, I'm interested in, you're interested in IP, right? But I'm just curious how many of you are interested in startup, you know, taking your invention and try to push all the way out to, you know, all the way through, because it's different state of level, right? You do in the lab, some people are just happy and get the result and publish, that's it. But some inventors really keen on take that, not only publish, file patent, but also push all the way. You can see the fruit until the other end. It's like, you know, be helpful for the user as well. So just curious about how many people interested in startup. So Hamdi, I saw Hamdi's hand. I don't see everyone online here, so people don't. So Sue has one. Anyone else? People who don't have the video on or speaker on, you don't mind, raise your hand, or I don't know how to.
I'll launch a poll and see.
Yeah.
People can answer. 2 say yes so far.
Okay.
Let's see any no's or maybes. 4 are yes, that's good.
Oh, that's good. Yeah. So the reason I'm asking is I didn't mention my background. I was 4 different startups before, and I think it's a high risk but high reward ventures, and I love it. When I was in the startup, I helped with starting some, and some already started, but I helped them to develop technologies while they're all the way to IP or get acquired by another company. So it's high risk but high yield. I think the potential reward is huge, but also it's risky, right? You may end up with nothing. So high risk, high yield kind of things. But I think it's wonderful that we have the resource from Libby and also Jennifer here as a resource to help. So, and over here, if you need our help, also we can help you as well. I think we're here to help you with the startup. You have that interest before we connect, connecting you to people and so on, and Hamdi, I think we talked about before. I hope, there's some progress. I'm not sure how far the progress you're coming in as well, but use us, use our resource, right? You leverage us. Whatever I can help, I promise I will try to help to my best ability. The goal of mine is to help one of our company, UT company, right? To be on the map like another Google or something. Maybe not as big as Google, but a Merck or something like that would be sufficient for us to be, that would make, it's a thrill to all of us, I guess, right? Am I correct, Jennifer? As I mentioned that.
Absolutely. And I think it's important to mention too that, there's obviously licensing opportunities, partner opportunities, commercialization opportunities. So even if I think we had 4 people and one said maybe so 5, about 50% have some interest, but you know, if you're not ready to make that step, there's still value in potential value in the research and the patents that you could potentially create, even if you're not thinking, you know, I want to build a business around this specific idea. So I wouldn't let that prevent you from exploring those options. It's always good to be open to the possibilities. You know, there's partnerships, companies buy, you know, patents and ideas all the time, you know, to either add to their portfolio or to, you know, leverage technology that's been done in a university setting.
And I'm not sure.
Yeah, I'm sorry. A very quick question about the expectations. Because I heard that or got this advice from a lot of elder faculties, more experienced. They said it's very, sometimes, most of the time, it's more contradicting with the academic expectations from department and university. And having a startup company, especially in certain fields, is a lot of headache getting it to succeed. And it could be a loss-loss situation rather than win-win. So I don't know about if you have any recommendations or some information about the university's expectations when it comes to that.
Well, Jennifer, I guess I will defer that answer to you. I guess you're here to help the UTC faculty member, right?
Yeah, that's a good question, and I don't know if there's a black or white answer to that. I'll say again, I think there's opportunity, and if you get to that point where it looks like, you know, either branching out or, you know, leaving your academic world makes sense, then you know, you have to make those decisions. But I wouldn't let the future cloud, you know, the opportunity to protect your intellectual property, your inventions. Every university is different. You know, my personal experience from Mississippi State is much different than other universities that I've been affiliated with. But I will say invention disclosures are encouraged. So if we start there, then we can get to, research is encouraged and supported and rewarded. So there's a lot of opportunity before I think you have to worry about that being a problem, I guess I would say.
Yeah, so I don't want to address the specific, but the point is that my boss, Stacy Patterson, when she's also a vice president of economic development for UC system, right? She's very supportive of startup. You know, matter of fact, in Knoxville here, we have a couple of programs. For example, there's initiative A65 and so on, basically helping startup and so on. And the fact Jennifer's here, right, it loud message is that they have management support from the top to help with invention, disclosure, innovation from UT, right? So I think there's support from the top, but I guess case by case, I guess it's different. You know what I mean?
And one of the things where my goal is to create this kind of community of UTC. It's obviously harder when we're not physically on campus, but you know, through these workshops, through the office hours that I'm now offering, and making those connections across the disciplines. You know, I know many of you are involved in some of the research that's you know, being done under the Sim Center and QUIP and other institutions. So the more that we can collaborate and talk about their ideas, there'll definitely be kind of, I think, more sharing and support handy for the, you know, that idea or wanting to learn more about, okay, what's the ROI if I do all this? Is this, you know, is this worth it?
We need to create the ideas first, and we are just
yes. We want to start
with the
with
patents first. Yes, that's
yes,
the first
yeah.
step.
We start there, and then everything else is much easier.
Yeah. So I have to go. I'm sorry because I have a meeting. So I don't know if you are closing, but I apologize. I have to leave now.
All right. Thanks, Andy.
Thanks to
Good to
everyone.
see you again. All right.
Thank you. Same here. Bye-bye.
So I want to just share sort of the last slide I had here. If there's other questions, please continue to ask them. But I think some of you probably saw my email announcement, but I started this week actually with virtual office hours from Tuesday afternoon and Fridays from 9 to 12. It's also listed on the CIE, the Center for Innovation and Entrepreneurship website now, and I just have a room. You can set up an appointment if you want to talk to me outside of these office hours, or you want to guarantee that I'm, available 1 o'clock on Tuesday or, 9:30 on Friday, or you can just pop into the Zoom room that's been dedicated for it. And I'll be doing that in this format, testing it out. If I get feedback on other days and times, I'll adjust it. But part of my focus is to get out into the research community and have conversations with faculty and research about what they're doing, what resources they might need. And as Libby said, make connections either on campus or in the community or in the region as appropriate and as to the best of my ability. And if I don't know someone, I'm always within 2 degrees of finding a connection that should help you advance your cause. If we don't have any other questions, then I want to thank everyone for attending. I think the one other slide, and like I said, we'll be sending these out. Here's the contact information if anyone wants that, just kind of immediately of everyone that spoke today. But we'll also be sending this out, and feel free to follow up with any other questions, any other ideas that you might have about this process, and look for other workshop opportunities in probably in September, in late September, early October. We are going to do one on SBIR, STTRs with Launch Tennessee, and exploring working with outside companies outside the university, and what that looks like as a researcher, sort of what your obligation might be, and how you might be able to connect with the corporate community. And then with CIE, we're going to do one that's more focused on kind of the business side. So customer discovery, marketing, understanding really who is your customer, what's the service or the product, so that, as Nir talked about, how do you actually go from invention to innovation to commercialization.
And Jennifer, I will send you a copy of my presentation for sharing if you need to.
Perfect. Yeah, send it to me, and then I'll combine them and send it out to everyone. Thank you all for your time. I hope you have a good rest of your week.
All right, everyone.
Thank you, Jennifer.
Thank you.
Jennifer, for organizing.
Bye now.
Thank you, Jennifer and Nir. Thanks.
Have a good day. Bye, Fahid.
Thank you. Appreciate it.